Hey, welcome to another episode of Match Cut. Today I'm talking to my good friend Mike Vogel. You probably know Mike from films like Poseidon, Cloverfield, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Help, and also his roles on Bates Motel, Pan Am, and currently CBS's Under the Dome. Mike and I sat down to discuss his career, and if you stick around to the end, also the project we're working on together. Hope you enjoy. I don't think I've ever played golf.
I played enough times to know that I'll never play. That it's not safe for me to play again. It's not safe for those playing around me.
Or there's something about it. It's a leisurely sport. I like that.
That's deceiving.
Is it?
It's deceiving. The cigars are good, and romping golf carts through the sand traps is fun. The rest of it they can have.
There's something I like about the the whole golfing lifestyle. Like, I don't need to actually play the game. I'll hang out at the clubhouse.
It's like you're the guy that sits in the ski lodge and just watches, just watches everyone from inside in your furry boots.
But man, it's so warm in there.
It really is.
Good
it really
food.
is. I've not been to a lodge with great food yet. Normally, it's just like reheated, microwavable chicken patties and
frozen pizza.
All
right, so what are we doing here?
I don't know. We're doing a podcast,
I guess.
apparently.
So we've known each other for, 6 or 7 years, I guess. But there's actually a lot that I don't know about you and how you got started in the business. And I'd just love to pick your brain about that.
Yeah.
How did that begin for you? When you as a kid, did you want to act? Was there a movie that you saw that made you want to get into the business, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Yeah, I grew up outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and surprisingly later in life, I've been shocked at the amount of artists that have come out of the Philadelphia area, both in television and film, and also in music. But at the time, that was just never an option. You never went to mom and dad and say, "Hey, mom and dad, I want to be an actor." There's something wrong with you if that happened. So, and it was never a reality. I think I've talked to a lot of my friends.
Well, because that's kind of what you do anyway as a kid.
That's right. You play make believe.
I just want to keep doing this.
Yeah,
forever.
Exactly. Which is why, as actors, as adults, we spend so much time trying to get back to how we were as kids. It's like
right.
It's like time reverses itself. But you never look at it as a viable. A lot of my friends that grew up in New York and L.A., it was always in their face, and it was always all of them, whether they're investment bankers now, had some stint served as a child model or a commercial actor. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And everything in my life I geared towards the Air Force Academy, and yet on this other side, I was always a ham. Whether it was at youth group and there were skits to be done, if it was in school at the pep rallies or the different.
You like to make people laugh.
Love to make people laugh, and love to imitate people. And
were you a prankster as a kid?
I was great at taking the piss out of something. Yeah. I wasn't great at. I love to carry out the prank. I probably wasn't the one originating the prank.
You weren't the mastermind.
Yeah, I was not the mastermind, but I was game for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so throughout high school, I remember my first time trying to step into an organized play at my high school. It was The Diary of Anne Frank. And I auditioned with a 5-person piece from Monty Python.
Which one?
It was
the show or the...
Yeah, the show. And I'm trying to remember now. I can't remember the name of it. It's all these guys sitting around basically one-upping each other, talking about how poor they were. We were so poor. We used to drink tea. Drank tea out of a rolled-up newspaper.
Yeah.
And the drama teacher said, "That was fantastic. I loved it. But I can't give you the part because I already gave it to one of my magicals."
But you can't play Anne Frank.
You can't. There will be no. And yeah, it wasn't 2014 yet, so that wasn't accepted. Yeah. So I kind of set out as a freshman to say, okay, obviously the whole organized theatrical system in my school is rigged, so I'm going to do these skits and presentations wherever I can. And I guess it was somewhere around my senior year in high school that I started. All my friends started saying, "Hey, you should really think about this as a career." I said, "Nah." I started dating a girl my first year out of high school who wanted to be a model more than life itself, and she talked me into going to one of those model search things that never work for anyone.
Like the thing they do at the mall.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's where, yeah, exactly. It was the King of Prussia Mall and basically, if you have all your teeth, you'll get a callback.
You have a future in this business.
You're gonna be a massive star. I went with, just because it's what she wanted to do, and we ended up getting callbacks to the big show down in Washington D.C., which was code word for spend more money. So we went down there, we spent more money, and I actually got a bunch of callbacks from agencies. And that's what kind of started all this. Finding everyone says, how do you my sister's friend's cousin's aunt's child wants to get into acting. I think they'd be really great. What do they need to do? I don't have an answer for you, because I've never met any two people in this industry that had the same path or the same journey into
formula.
It. There is no formula. You study your butt off, you do your best to become the best darn actor you possibly can, and then you find a way, and it finds a way, and it finds you, and it all kind of comes together how it does. But it's different in every case.
Did you like movies as a kid? Were you a movie buff?
Yeah, and I used to love. Would I say I had a cultured taste? No. I was a massive war movie freak. If there's one out there, I've seen it. Kelly's Heroes was one of my favorite movies of all times. But I think where it really hit me that this is what I wanted to do, I was sitting in Saving Private Ryan with my grandfather, my father, my uncle, and my cousin. And my grandfather, who had gone through World War II, the first 15 minutes of that movie, sitting next to him, watching him bobbing and weaving in his seat, so physically, I'd never seen that side of him.
How old was he at the time?
I want to say he was, I'd say he was 81.
Probably those memories, came flooding
Everything.
back watching that.
And all the, I was reading about everything that was happening during the time that World War II vets were checking themselves back into VA hospitals because it was bringing back such vivid experiences and memories of what they went through that I kind of said to myself in that moment, anything that can have such a people can have such a visceral experience with that can affect them in such a powerful way, I need to be a part of that. Yeah. And that was kind of the thing that set me into motion in pursuing this industry, as being a part of affecting people in that kind of way.
Yeah, that whole opening sequences. That's difficult to watch for people who didn't go through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I remember, I know Tom Cruise says 2001 was the movie that made him, want to make movies. I know Spielberg talks about seeing The Greatest Show on Earth with his dad when he was a kid. But how old were you when that movie came out? It's not like you were a kid.
No, I think I was 18. I was 17 or 18 when that happened. So I came to it. I came to it later in life, and I look at a lot of my buddies that have come up through the industry that have been doing this since they were, children, and I've often asked myself, would I want to now having kids myself? I look at my oldest daughter, and she is a carbon copy of me. She was born to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Would I put her into that now? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. Only because I've been I've been jaded by some of the experiences I've witnessed over the years. But selfishly, as an actor, there's a part of me I think that would have wanted to start this earlier, in a very healthy way, to have started to throw myself into the art of acting earlier than I did. I just didn't have that opportunity.
But at the same time, you have to wonder, would you be even more jaded had you started earlier? You know, would you have had not that you've been doing this for 30, 40 years, but would you have had the longevity that you've had you started at, 5
Absolutely.
or 6 or 7 years old?
Absolutely. I think especially for a guy, I think history has shown the later you hit, the later that you really start coming into your prime and all this, the longer your career will be. And I think that there's a lot of what's that book where I forget who it is that talks about it takes, is it 10,000 hours or 10 years to become an expert at something.
Right. Yeah.
And I think so often in this industry, people get a TV show or they get their first movie and they go, "Oh, I've made it. I'm here. I'm good to go." And yet you look at the greats, the Tom Hankses, the Anthony Hopkins, guys like that who they'll still go back into acting classes just because they're looking for that way to continually better themselves. And if you look at this as more of the journey to get there versus having arrived at a place, I think that that's what keeps people constantly engaged with actors is seeing how they're growing over the years, how they're taking more risks, how they're through their own life experiences, becoming a father, going through divorce, getting married, whatever those things are, it colors your palette, it colors what you can bring to a character. And it's only through age and experience that you're able to bring that stuff to screen.
Yeah, and I don't know how could you feel like you ever stop learning?
Well, yeah, you bring up a good point. It's the difference between an artist and a celebrity. You know what I mean? There are artists, and every actor would love to call themselves an artist, and to an extent they are, but I think the celebrity gets in the way a lot of the art, and you get surrounded by a lot of people that are yesing you, that are telling you what you want to hear, that are telling you you're this, you're that, and it's the ones that are going out and that I have uber respect for, which is the ones creating their own content or that are dreaming up these projects from start to finish, or a Daniel Day-Lewis, where I don't know that I could ever make the level of commitment that he does, but I look at that level of commitment and just go, oh my gosh, to see someone so enveloped in something, you can't help but be awestruck by.
But then somebody like Duvall just has a completely different approach. It's like you just show up and do it. It's like this no BS kind of attitude, which is kind of great too.
Yeah, well,
just two totally different approaches.
That's the thing, is then you have the guys that are, I think, an actor that I identify the most with is I like Paul Newman. I don't know if it was on Inside the Actor Studio one time or somewhere. He was talking about his journey and all this, and arguably anyone would say Paul Newman, fantastic actor. And he said, I was not a great actor. I was a good craftsman. I could build a really nice cabinet. And coming from my upbringing, that resonates with me, in that I can work really hard, and there's an extent to which I can be a free spirit artist, but there's a lot of me that's very technical and a good craftsman that can build something, that can put pieces together. But then you've got the freaks of nature like Marlon Brando, like the Duvalls, like Gosling, who just seem to show up after a bender all night long, and the work only gets better. And it angers you. But
I listened to this interview with Duvall and Downey Jr. and the director of The Judge the other day, and Duvall was saying, he's accused of just kind of playing himself. And he said, well, that's a lot harder than it looks, to show up and be relaxed and perfectly at ease. No, but talking about Paul Newman, man, I love Paul Newman. And I just watched, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but I just watched The Sting for the first time. And it's one of those movies that I always kind of just, for some reason, put off seeing. And it was so good. Mm-hmm. I just loved it. And he's so great in it.
Yeah.
But, be the craftsman approach, isn't that kind of what it is, though? I mean, you do have, that's what it is by definition.
It's what it is. It's what it should be. I think there, there's a couple. It's like anything. It's like politics. There's several different parties. I think in acting, and you've got the uber artists that are. You go through their script and they've got like pieces of cloth torn and stapled into their script and scents on it that means something to. And listen, I guess if that gets you there, all that's valid. When you're filming an 18 to 20 hour day, and at the end of it, you've got this massive emotional breakdown scene, and I don't care if you have to wear a pink tutu, drink 4 bottles of wine, and stand on your head to get there. Your job is to get there. And however someone describes what they are or what gets them that, more power to them. But no, I agree.
And how do you do that? How do you prepare? For you, is it because you're not a method actor necessarily, right?
Not
or
necessarily.
Do you do that? Do you draw on your own experience, or is it really just, are you able to kind of flip that switch and kind of shift into make believe?
Man, I'm a mutt. I'm a cross between, I think, a lot of things, a lot of techniques, and then a lot of whatever works at that moment.
Yeah.
There was earlier in my career, I drew heavily on my own experience and reliving experiences, and you find quickly that dries up. That only lasts for so long, and all of a sudden you go back to that trick, and your mind has kind of. That dog won't hunt anymore.
And it has to take an emotional toll.
Absolutely. I could go out and work an 18-hour day with my dad digging a well or digging a sewer, and I could work an 18-hour day on set on a film. I'm far more exhausted coming home after the film, not because I've been physically active, but because of the emotional engagement that it takes. Think about yourself after a fight with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, with your husband, with your wife. You're spent. It takes it out of you, and you spend hours trying to revive yourself from that. I think acting done right is a lot the same way. So, my process is like I don't hate on a method. I hate on method when it negatively affects the people around you. When your process becomes mean-spirited towards the crew and the people that are helping to make this project happen, and then you hide behind hey, I'm sorry, I was just in character. I was just in. If that's the case, be professional enough to just let a first AD or someone on set know, hey, listen, I'm just in this spot right now. I'm going to be off on my own. You come and get me when you need. But don't use that as an excuse. I heard an excuse one time. An actress smacked a crew member across the face, and then I was just in character. You don't get to do that. You don't get to do that. We're all adults here.
Was that something you witnessed?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because I had a theory as to who that might be. But I won't say.
That did happen.
Yeah. Okay, so going back for a minute, so you got this modeling, or you started to get some modeling gigs, and is that was kind of the beginning?
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
Yeah, I mean, I quickly realized that because I'm not 6'4", that walking the catwalks of Milan was never going to be in my future, and that was okay. The modeling, the print work, paid the bills for as long as I needed to, and it kind of.
And what did you do? Did you do? Was that local stuff? Did you do any big campaigns?
Yeah. New York, I did Levi's and some Abercrombie stuff, and I did. Oh, geez, I can't even. I think I've blocked it all out because it's because I've wanted to forget. But yeah, I got to do some great big national stuff, but all of that did nothing other than pay the bills. And I remember I was doing an industrial film for Canon, for Canon cameras, and the guy that played my dad in it just said, this who you represented by. I told him my agency at the time. He said no. He said, you're going somewhere. As soon as we wrap here, you're coming with me into my agency, and I'm sitting you down in front of. And he put it all on the line and walked me into my first legitimate. I don't want to say my first legitimate, but the first agency that I had that booked the television role that moved me out to L.A.
And what was the agency?
They're called CED, Cunningham Escott DePine.
Okay.
I don't know what I think there's another letter in there now today.
And that role was grounded for life?
That role was grounded for life. Very pivotal moment in my life.
And was that the first professional acting gig that you had, or did you do
other than I had a couple
some
commercials,
yeah.
But that was the first legitimate show. And I remember I almost didn't go. My grandfather was dying, and it was I still remember it was July 31st when the audition came in, and the night before the nurse had told us that he's not going to make it through the night, or he's not going to make it through tomorrow. And the appointment came in, and I said to my dad, I said, I'm not gonna go. I just want to stay home. He said, no, you're gonna go. He'd want you to go. So it actually kind of worked out for the audition and the character. I didn't care about any of it. I bombed up to New York on the train, did my audition, and I came home. And I was able to be there with him when he passed away. And later that day, the next day we got the call from the show that they wanted to hire me, and that was a Tuesday. Friday we had his funeral, and Saturday I was living in Los Angeles for the next 12 years of my life.
Wow.
So it one door closes, another door opens, and it's just weird how things.
What was the span of time there? So you found out and you moved to L.A.
I moved to L.A. 4 days later.
Jeez.
the day after his funeral.
That's amazing.
So it's every time that season comes around every year, it's kind of always etched in my mind. Literally, that's when my career essentially started, with the loss of someone who was incredibly near and dear to me. It's interesting how many actors I've talked to. If you're in this long enough, one of the tough things about the industry is how many precious life moments they've missed because of it was Jeremy Northam, I think I was talking to when I was doing Miami Medical. He missed the death of he was not able to be there for when his father or his mother passed away. He was on stage on the West End both times, knowing that they were passing away, but the show has to go on. You're contracted, and there's so many moving parts around you. You can't it's not like a regular job where you can just, hey, I got to go home early today because I've got to do this thing.
Yeah.
I got to take a couple days off because I got to be here for so and so. If you do it long enough, you miss some pretty serious moments, and a lot of people have a lot of those stories.
Yeah, I read an interview with Chris Pratt. I think it was Entertainment Weekly, and he talked about he's been very busy between
Slightly
Guardians of the Galaxy and Jurassic World and everything else he's doing, but he said he had seen his daughter, I think, 3 times in the last 15 months or something, some ridiculous amount of time. But that's tough.
Yeah. It's tough for those two, especially. And I've worked with Anna before. I've not met Chris. I think I kind of get this feeling that he and I would get along really, really well.
Yeah.
But it's tough for those two, especially because they both have very successful careers that are pulling them in polar ends of the spectrum, and finding that time is at a premium.
I watched Ben-Hur a couple weeks ago, and I was just reading some stuff about it after I watched the movie, and according to Wikipedia, which isn't always the most reliable source, but I think this is true, the shoot was, I think, 9 months. It was 6-day weeks for 9 months. And
sounds like a TV show, I know.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to ask you that. So on Dome, is that are you guys doing? Is it 6-day weeks?
It's not intended to be. I think last year was a. I will not get myself fired. Last year was a bit of an anomaly in that you hit a point where the network wants more in a shorter amount of time, and no one's willing to pay for it, and so you find a way to make it work, and the sacrifice of that is time.
Yeah.
Did we work every week, 6-day weeks? No, but we were, we'd go 2 weeks, 6-day weeks, and then 1 5-day week, 2 weeks, 6-day weeks, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, 2 weeks on, 1 week off. It's tough, but 6-day weeks for 9 months and Ben-Hur.
How do you have a family? How do you have any semblance of normal life at that point?
Charlton Heston is an interesting one. That's why he ended up homeschooling all of his kids. All of his kids were homeschooled, and they traveled.
They would go with him.
They traveled the world with him, and
that's awesome.
He says to this day that, well, not to this day, may he rest in peace, but he always talked about that it was one of the best things he's ever done because his kids had such incredible life experiences. They'd been to Russia in the middle of the Cold War. They'd been to places where no one else had access to.
Guillermo del Toro does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They take their kids with them, and
I think it's huge. I think
getting
it's
to see the world. It's got. I think it's probably a little tough because you move around so much, but that's got to be a cool experience, though.
Yeah, I haven't figured out how I haven't figured out how I would feel about it. Will my kids? I can use the excuse and say, "Hey, listen, you'll thank me one day for this." Okay, you'll get to a certain point where you'll be thankful for these experiences that you've had, or will they resent me because they never got to have that normal childhood? They never got to play on the soccer team because we were in this state, this country, that country in the middle of this season, and it couldn't have worked. Granted, they're getting other experiences, but I don't know. I think both can work, but man, does it take a lot of...
But, that could end up being... For them, that could end up being, just a bunch of wonderful memories. I mean...
Absolutely.
It's untraditional, but it might be a thing that they really look back on with fondness. I mean, I think about... Brandon, my business partner, and his family ran a carnival. And so as a kid, they just moved around all the time, and they'd set the carnival up and tear it down. And so to him, he just has these really fond memories of that. And that's a pretty odd childhood,
But is it? I mean, it's almost every kid's dream. I mean, because and now granted, when you live around it, I'm sure it gets old like anything, but how many times have you gone to the amusement park and just said, man, if I could just live here, if this were my existence,
maybe as a kid,
and roller coasters.
Maybe as a kid.
Exactly.
For me, it gets old after about 30 minutes now.
that's right. But no, absolutely. I think a lot of it is in how the parents sort of craft the experience. I'm sure you did a lot of traveling as a kid, and it's when the parents say, okay, we have a very non-typical upbringing here, but we're going to make the most of it, and we're just going to have a blast together. And when it's this inclusive thing, I think where you you jump into your kids' world with them in the middle of what can be chaos. I think that's what they remember, is that mommy and daddy invested themselves into what was a very chaotic upbringing at times.
I feel like you do a good job of trying to really, keep your family around whenever possible. And I mean, last season they were with you they were with you almost the whole time.
The whole time, yeah. It's tough. It's tough because there's moments when I'm like, man, I love having them here. It is so tough to come home after 16 hours and then start preparing for the next 16-hour day tomorrow, but yet having to be dad and they just want, this is their time with you, and yet you're so are you ever really all there?
Yeah.
And then the season before that, they didn't come out until was it May? So from February to May, I was on my own, and I couldn't function because they weren't there. So
yeah,
there is no happy medium.
Well, when we shot after, I saw my family, I guess, essentially every weekend. Like I would shoot for the week, and then they would come in for a day or two.
Yeah,
and that was kind of the perfect
That's a good mix.
scenario because when I was on set, I was really present and I was there, and then in my time off, even though I had to prepare for the next week, it was still I had a little more downtime. But yeah, that's got to be tough because I remember, looking back, we wanted to shoot the movie here in town, and looking back, I wouldn't have done it any other way because it really allowed me to to be focused.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of why I enjoy living in Nashville, working elsewhere, because now when we lived in LA, I never felt like I was fully home or fully at work. I was kind of just in this in-between world where everything happened in the same place. Whereas here, it's like when I'm home in Nashville, I'm home.
yeah,
When I leave, it's game time, which is it's inconvenient, sure, but it's a nice separation, I think, to have.
you're so present now that you're bored.
It's weird how that happens.
That's the problem.
That's right.
So I listened to this. Apparently, I'm just the guy that listens to interviews and reads interviews all the time. On the latest Nerdist podcast, they interviewed Bob Odenkirk, who was in Breaking Bad and a lot of other things. And they're doing this spin-off show called Better Call Saul about his character.
Uh-huh.
And they just finished the season. The one thing he said that I thought was interesting was he said, it was so much material, and you're working so hard, probably very similar to you when you're doing Under the Dome, that looking back, he says, yeah, it's going to be great. There's it's going to be really intense and really emotional, and it's all just a blur. Mm-hmm. Like to him, like he can't even really. Mm-hmm. He said he was doing interviews for the DVD or for web or whatever, and they were asking him about specific episodes, and he had no idea like what had happened. He had to remind himself because it was all just this blur. And do you feel that way at the end of a season?
Oh, absolutely. This last season especially, we were shooting 4 or 5 episodes at one time. We got so far behind. We were still shooting episode 1, pieces of episode 2, pieces of 4, pieces of 6, and pieces of 8.
So would that be multiple directors at that point, or are they shooting material for someone else's? A lot
of times they're shooting material for someone else's episode because that person has like a 10-day window that they're free, and then they're on to another project. But we have 2 producers that are also shooting directors that can make that. So on any given day, I could be in 3 different episodes. And
how do you mentally keep track of that?
You don't. You at a certain point you just have to fall. Hopefully it's not a massively important scene. And at a certain point you have to just trust that you can only control what you can control. You can only be all you can do is show up and be present, and this is where Duvall's technique comes in fantastic.
You just show up and do it.
You just show up and say the lines, and be reactive, and be present to your, to everyone that's in front of you. Mm-hmm. But man, it messes with you.
I bet.
And you get to the end of a season, and it's interesting because the hiatus, your off season, is the time to go and score some movies and some other work. You're
just exhausted.
Yeah, it'll take me a month and a half, 2 months to want to do anything again because you're so emotionally spent that it again. People say, "Oh, come on, you're an actor. You're acting. Like, settle down, Sally. It's not that bad." And I'm not bemoaning the fact. I'm not here to bitch about it. But there is a reality where just actors operate on it. It's not a physical. Arena. I mean, it is at times. There's some very physical stuff I've got to do. My body's broken down at the end of 6 months because I've been beat up, dragged in harnesses everywhere, and So yeah, but emotionally, you've got nothing in your bag of tricks if you're not free emotionally to kind of call on the things that you need to bring stuff to life. And acting is the one. Yeah, I grew up wrestling, and so for me, kind of nutting up and just doing it is in my DNA. There's a sadistic side of me that enjoys abusing myself a little bit. That said,
your sadomasochistic tendency.
That side of me. But that doesn't work in acting. That doesn't work because Larry Moss, one of the greatest acting coaches of our time, has this theory when he talks about emotion. Emotion is like calling a cat. If you go to call a cat and the cat's walking over to you, let it get right to you, and then you pounce at it. Come here, cat. It runs away. It's gone. You're not getting it back. But if you slowly drop your hand down and let it come over, start sniffing you, but you can't grab it yet because it's not comfortable and it's just lightly touching you. Emotion is the same way. You can't jump at it. You have to let it come. And acting baffles me that way because I'm not used to that. I'm used to sucking it up, running directly at it, putting my head down and saying, it hurts like hell, but let's do it. And there's a time and a place for that acting. But it doesn't ever work out to the best of your advantage.
Do you prefer film to television?
Absolutely. The time is everything in all of this, and to have the time to to change gears, to explore something. Film, you're shooting. I think the most pages I've ever shot on a film in a day are 4 pages, 5 pages, and that's pushing it. On a television show, I've done 10-page days where you're just burning through exposition.
Yeah. And
you walk away going, that couldn't have made any sense to anyone. Anyone watching this is going to go, you're a liar. You're a liar. But they don't. And it's never that bad.
Well, and when you realize, how grueling that schedule is in TV, I mean, it just makes performances like, Cranston's, or somebody like that just even more impressive.
Yeah. When you realize the time, and cable's really kind of got it figured out that they're shooting mini movies every week.
Yeah.
And they give their creative teams, and we did Bates, it's no Breaking Bad, but it was the first time I'd done a cable show, and it was refreshing. Man, first it takes a willing group of players, and everyone on that cast was game for anything, and Vera game for anything, and we'd stop a scene in the middle of the scene, just go, you know what? Nah, We're going a different direction. We're not playing enough here. Let's do this. Let's do that.
You didn't have the politics to deal with.
There's no politics. They basically they trust their showrunners and they say go make a show. And if you find out at the end of it all it doesn't work, well, then we. But it seems to work.
Yeah, and that was a good season of television, I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
I told you this. It was kind of one of my favorite performances of yours. I thought it was really believable, and you played a good creep.
I don't know how to feel about that, but it was just fun looking back. Now the interesting thing is from the actor side of it, I was in a really tough time of my life physically at that point. I was like I'd fried my adrenal system, so I felt like I was on another planet most of the day. I couldn't form a thought. I couldn't think clearly. It's interesting how I specifically remember filming that going, if I ever work again after this,
it's a miracle.
It will prove to me that God is far wiser than I will ever be.
That's amazing to me. So you felt like
the worst.
You were phoning it in.
Oh, the worst I have ever felt in my life. And then to look back at that now and go, somehow it worked. Somehow it worked. Which informs you that when we hold on so tight to something and we hold on so tight to these performances, not that you don't give your best. You absolutely give your best. But I remind myself, like when things get tough on Dome or anywhere else, that, you know what?
All you have to do is fry your adrenal system.
All you have to do is phone it in, and that's a lie. Because I was not phoning it. I was working harder than I've ever worked on Bates, but I just had no barometer. I had no compass to kind of judge what was happening.
Well, it may also be just good directing and good editing, but I felt like that was a really natural performance.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And looking back, I look fondly upon the time that I had there. Did you watch
the show?
I did. Because
you usually don't like
to
do that.
I usually don't. I hate watching myself. I'll literally watch when I have to live tweet, when I have to. But that show was kind of unique in and of itself. And I think the cast had such a really good bond that it's almost like watching a sports team where you want your team to succeed. You want your team you like to see them performing all out on the field. I think it was one of those situations.
So when you look back on your career up to this point, I'm curious to know what are the landmark films for you that you've done that looking back it's like, man, that was a real, whether it was a great movie or not, or whether it was a difficult experience or not, it's just something that really, really brought you to where you are today. Does that make sense? Like when you look back, I'm sure there's some that stick out in your mind as that was a formative experience.
What's that you were talking about, that guy that got to the end of it and it's all a blur? And quickly thinking back, certainly Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Marcus the Spell directing. My first film, all of us were...
Did you have any interaction with Bay?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
He just seems like a cartoon character to me.
So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we
moving on.
But the cast, like, I've never had a more... up until like a year ago, we were all still getting together regularly every year for like a reunion. We just had such a fun time doing it, and it was such a surprise hit. We made it for $8 million. I think it made $150 million, and that set off. That kind of reignited the low budget into high profit horror movie at that time. And so that was a big landmark for me. After that, I would say, there's several movies in between that were great and that I had fun doing. But then Poseidon, my first,
that was your biggest.
That was my biggest budget film that I've done, and for all of those experiences was wonderful. But for a different reason, getting to work with Kurt Russell, seeing a real. I think of Kurt as like an old school movie star. They call him the blue collar movie star, and he is. Mm-hmm. Seeing how a guy can be good to the crew and yet a bona fide leader all at once, just in every aspect, setting the tone, setting the example in professionalism, in the workload that he had to juggle, the writing and rewriting things, and in something in such a large scale and large magnitude as that movie was, seeing him handle that, and seeing him handle himself on the press tours that we would go on when the film came out, dealing with awkward questions. As a young actor, it was a great learning experience for me, I think, in moving forward.
And would you say that the rest of the cast followed that example?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
I'm trying to get you in trouble.
You are. Now, there was certainly some difficult situations and people on that, which is on every film I've ever done. There's always one.
Yeah.
There's always one. Be it a guy, be it a girl, there will always be one.
Your goal is not to be the one.
My goal is to not be that one, although I'd like to learn to be that one a little bit. just have moments. I'm just not good at it.
It has to be, Poseidon, it has to be fun and kind of exhilarating to make a movie of that scale. With all the stunts. I'm sure it's incredibly tiring and challenging, but...
Yeah, we all had pneumonia a couple times.
But that is very much... a lot of that stuff was practical, right?
We shot
that's
in the
old
water,
school movie making.
Yeah, we shot in the water tank there at Warner Brothers. At one time, we were taking up 6 sound stages.
Wow.
Like, you would go into one sound stage, and they had that cruise ship. It was so decadent and ornate, and then you'd go across the way into the next sound stage. It was the same thing, flipped upside down and ruined.
Wow.
It was incredible. The getting to shoot in a water tank, where it got to the point where your teeth would be chattering. The water was warmed to 82 degrees, but they couldn't make it any warmer because that's the beyond that bacteria forms. So you get in and you're like, oh, this is nice. I could do this. I could really sit in this. And then 2 hours later, your body temperature you will get hyperthermia. If your body temperature drops below 98, it could be 92. You have hyperthermia. And you don't realize that. And it got to the point where it's a 30-foot deep tank. Rather than going up and down all the time, we put a weight belt on and stood on the bottom of the tank on an air regulator in between takes. I think I was underwater for over an hour at one point, just standing there on the bottom, sucking on an air regulator. We'd go and shoot the take, swimming through the hallway with a kid on my back, go back, grab the air hose, and just stand there. So it was a really interesting experience. Also an interesting experience in learning that just because you do a massive film does not mean it's going to be wildly successful. And listening to all the people around you telling you, hey, listen, this one's the one. This one is going to change everything. And then it doesn't. And realizing that, you know what, there's life beyond that. You keep working, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you keep doing your best, and, things take a different path. I think lastly, I'd say The Help was just a wonderful experience. Being part of a film, I think that touches on difficult and sensitive subject matter in a really, I think, really fair and really nice way, in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Really, and just a beautiful film. I think where I think all sides walk away from it having gotten something and feeling great about it, and was just a wonderful ride to be a part of that cast, to be a part of the success.
Did you have more scenes in the script than ended up in the finished film?
Yes. There were.
I think I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, there were a couple more, but there weren't. If you read the book, which I had after, you read the book, Johnny Foot is much more of a prominent character than what finds its way into. But what you realize is that in a 2-hour movie, they cut that movie down. I think the first cut was like 3.5 hours, something like that. So they whittled an hour and a half off of it.
Yeah.
But it's the girl's movie, and so you realize that you're at a certain point you're going to be the sacrificial lamb, but having a part, I think, that scores big enough that it resonates in people's memory, and people, I count that one special, having to have had the interaction I did with Octavia Spencer, who's, my God, has just become a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a great cast. A
great cast all around. But Jessica Chastain, I remember us sitting around and talking, and I wasn't too familiar with her. None of her films had come out yet. And
yeah, because she had like 20 movies in a year.
She had like 20 movies in the can. And she says to me, we're sitting around, one of my buddies said to me, bro, you're working with Chastain. She's the real deal. I was like, oh, great, cool. We met, and she was a cool chick, and absolutely you could see just what she did with that character, an unbelievable actress. We're sitting around talking one day, and I turned to her and I'm like, so what have you done? Like, what, what? And she very coyly, very humbly, I've done these 4 little films, and they're, I did one of them 4 years ago, hasn't come out yet. I think it's coming out this year, and, and I said to her, well, you know what? Keep going. I think it's going to be all right. I think that, you're super talented. Hang in there. I think it's going to. And between that time and when we all showed up at the SAG Awards, Tree of Life hit, Take Shelter, all just one after the other. Boom, boom, boom. To the point where it's like she had so many great roles out there that they didn't even know what to nominate her for, because I literally, we got to the SAG Awards and I looked at her and I just went, you suck. And she knew exactly what she was doing, and she just laughed. She's a great one to work with.
I want to know, do you, here in Nashville, do you have people recognize you?
Yeah.
And what do they recognize you from? Is it Dome primarily, because that's on now?
Yeah, lots of Dome. Lots of Dome. There's lots of Dome out there. Yeah, and you certainly, it kind of comes in seasons, of course, where it when it's airing, it's a lot more prominent in people's minds. But we have a long season off air, so we hit the winter lull, the spring lull.
Yeah.
But I find Nashville to be great because they're so used to having celebrity and the music industry and everything around them, that it doesn't faze them.
Yeah.
And they're very cool about it, very indiscreet. You get a lot. What I find I get a lot of around here is, because it's in LA, people are looking for actors. They expect to see them there, and so they pick you out of a crowd 9 times out of 10. Here, it's out of context, and so
right.
I'll go up to at the sporting goods store or the hunting shop. I'll go to pay for something. And it's like, hey, ma'am, did you go to such and such high school? I think we went to high school together, didn't we? When did you graduate? Nope, that's not. Are you sure? Because I swear, where'd you go to college? Maybe it was college together, or where'd you work? And they can't, and I have fun, admittedly.
That's
sometimes
awesome.
Just playing with it, but yeah.
So have you, I want to know too, have you had people mistake you for the wrong celebrity? Because I love those stories. Everybody has one of those, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the one I get a lot, Max Terriot and I get pegged for one another.
Who is that?
He plays Dylan on Bates
Oh,
Motel.
right. Yeah.
And we look eerily like separated twins. And I've get so many times, like if I have my Bates Motel sweatshirt on, someone will come up to me, man, I love your show. I love your show. This last season was fantastic. You were great this last season. And I realize I was only on the first season. They've done the second season. So he thinks I'm Max. And then Max has gotten on Max sent me twittered something the other day where he was getting on an airplane and the stewardess was like, I have got to tell you, I am in love with your show. My husband and I watch it, and he's like, "Thank you, yeah, thank you so much. That's kind of you." And she's like, "Under the Dome is our number one." Oh, you think I'm Mike, right? And then he just plays me and
yeah, that's
leaves
awesome.
them with a bad image.
So before we wrap this up, I guess we should at least mention this this short that we're working on.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're launching the Kickstarter. It's a little high concept sci-fi short that we're going to try to pull off, and we'll see if we can be successful.
Yeah, I think we're this is a lot of what we were talking about is technology and the ability for people to kind of go out there and start creating their own content, do stuff that's innovative and different and sort of pushes the boundaries that without being tied to a studio system. And
we've actually tried, if you recall, to make 2 movies together.
That's right. Right.
So the feature length movies didn't work out, so we're trying a 15-20 minute movie to see if we can make that happen.
The feature length movies will work out. That I have no doubt of. But I think this is encouraging because I have this feeling about Nashville and where we are.
Do you hear the bird hitting the window? By the way,
is that what it is?
Yeah. This is the most unintelligent bird.
This has to be your mascot. Like he's got to get some kind of inclusion into this podcast. You have to like drop it. Oh my word! There it is.
I'm fairly certain that you have some kind of hunting
contraption
firearm in your
my
car that you could
we could dispose of it with. Is it cardinal season? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, no, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about doing it here in Nashville. Again, the ability to be doing this stuff wherever you are, wherever you live, is great. And for those that have yet to find out, Ryan is an incredibly gifted writer and has a fantastic eye as a director. And what I love about him is that you've heard it here. He literally has just glanced the surface of his wealth of film and cinema knowledge. He's such a buff when it comes to those things. He's so well studied. I'm excited to see what he brings, his vision that he brings to these things, because if it's out there, he's seen it and has thought long and hard about why he likes the project, the things he doesn't like about the project, and really really dives into this stuff. So I think people will be excited by the short, and who knows, maybe there's an opportunity to do a more full length version of this when we're on the other side of it.
I'm just glad you learned your lines for today.
Did I go off script at all? Everything's sitting here laid out in front of me.
Good. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be really cool. We obviously need some financial support to make it happen, but it's not an astronomical figure, but it's, I think, enough to make it work. And it's a pretty ambitious short that has a lot of visual effects, and it involves time travel and a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, I
feel that your 90% producing fee is a little steep. The fact that 90% of that figure is going to your pocket scares me a little bit, but.
I thought that 90% fee was going to you.
Shh.
We haven't actually even discussed what I'm paying you, so
I hope nothing.
yeah, that's my hope too.
You are, and did I mention he's a great producer? He's a really, really great producer.
We'll give you some points on the back end.
That's right.
Of the short film that will make no money.
This deal just gets sweeter and sweeter.
Yeah, but yeah, if you don't know about the film, it's basically about a guy who. The film opens with this argument between this guy and his wife, and it escalates and becomes a little more heated, and he pushes her, she hits her head, and she dies, and he's really disturbed and shaken up, obviously, and we basically realize that we're in the future, we're in the year 2020, and he goes and uses this service called Multiverse to travel back in time to the day before, in an attempt to try to save his wife, to prevent her from dying. But to do that, he's going to have to move some puzzle pieces around, and because he's basically trying to create a reality where he and his wife live happily ever after, and things get very complicated, I would say. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. I think it's going to be a really entertaining, kind of edge of your seat film. But I think it also deals with some kind of interesting philosophical ideas.
No, especially in a short format, it's going to move quick,
very quick,
which is nice because it's it's going to move beginning to end, which is what I'm excited about, along with the questions that it's going to make us confront. The format, I think, serves well as a short. So
yeah. It's exciting.
Help us do it. Help us do it.
Please. Mike will... actually, I don't know that Mike even knows. I don't know that you know all of the things that I've committed you to on the reward side. So,
this is
one night at Mike Vogel's house.
That's...
Mike Vogel's bed and breakfast.
Mike Vogel working the grill, cooking for you. There's whatever we got to do, we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
You're really sweet, Ryan. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, All right, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Absolutely. Good times.